Hi, good morning. Rachel with Evergreen Certifications. Today I have the privilege of having Nicolle Carr with us. She is an advisor for our Certified Youth Mental Health Specialist certification. Nicolle, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, my name is Nicolle Carr. I am down here in Oklahoma, and I've been working with Pussy and Evergreen for about, let's see, the boys are 6.5, so for almost 6.5, 7 years now.
Awesome, great. So today we're just going to go over a couple of questions regarding our Youth Mental Health Specialist certification. So let's hop right in and start with our first question. So why should a professional, in your opinion, become certified in youth mental health?
Since this is informal, I didn't look up the statistics, but it's something like almost 20% of our youth suffer from various mental health disorders. And when you realize that all of our kids go through school and all of our kids have a variety of institutions that they're all through, the people who interact with them in those places, it just behooves them to have this additional level of knowledge. For everything from the kid who looks sad in class to the kid who looks like the difficult kid in class, or even the kid that you think is just sleeping or non-compliant in class, and to really realize that there's probably way more to it than just the kid who's, choosing to be the bad kid or choosing to sleep in class. And having knowledge to come, to help tackle that situation versus just assuming they're making that choice to be a jerk that day, or to make the choice to sleep during your class, or that it's, even at some level within their capabilities to just turn it off, if that makes sense. And so I think that the more people who have a certification in what could really be happening at the, the neurological level, at the disorder level, the whole, all of those, then it can only make us better prepared to work with our kids.
Absolutely, yeah. And the Evergreen certification launched, right after the COVID boom, where not that there wasn't always a demand, but we saw this larger demand of people needing resources and help for students, especially as they were being reintegrated back into school from being home and things like that. So I think that's a really good point that it looks different for all kids, right? And we need the knowledge to be able to recognize that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what specifically is unique about this certification, and what knowledge will professionals gain by obtaining the certification and continuing their education in youth mental health?
So I think this certification is unique in the sense that, one, it really focuses on the youth aspect of it. If you just dive into mental health as a whole, it's really too big to tackle. And so even when I work with people going through various university programs, I tell them, like, at some point you're going to want to focus, because, working with 50 and 60-year-olds who are depressed is going to look really different than working with your 10, 12, 15, 16-year-olds, and both output, like what it might look like, what their brain is going through at those different levels, and those sorts of things. And so I think that the fact that the certification really targets the youth aspect of things is going to be helpful for a few reasons. One, there's specific jobs that work with youth kids, right? Like our first grade, second grade, third grade teachers are probably not working with 50-year-olds. And so if you can get certain occupations really focused in on what mental health looks like for their folks, like the people they're going to work with, then that can really benefit really everyone, the person who needs the services and the person who has the knowledge. Because even now, there's times where I'm like, I can't know everything, and I dig into it and I try to look some things up. But if I'm always wondering, like, I know so little about this big topic, then somebody who's getting an extra certification, but it's not necessarily their bread and butter, is always going to feel like there's just too much out there. So the more we can narrow it in for a certain group, I think the better, which is something that this certification does well.
Absolutely. So I think that kind of plays right into the next question I want to talk with you about is the professions that qualify for the certification. And this certification has a wide variety as youth and mental health happens in all sorts of settings, right? So education professionals, behavioral health professionals, rehabilitation professionals, all can obtain this certification as long as they're licensed and work with youth in either an education or a clinic setting at least 20 hours a week. Um, so, Nicolle, can you speak a little bit to why you feel it's important that a wide variety of professionals be knowledgeable in this area?
Sure. You can take whether it's a clinic or I'm going to focus on schools for just a second because that's everything from where I wrote my textbook down. Like schools
Mhm.
are a focus. And so if you think about a school and all the professions that are in a school, right? It's not just teachers, even though that's what first comes to mind. You've got everyone from like the reading specialist, the librarian, the teacher, the school counselor. All these different people are all working with the kids, and for all of them to have to come from the same lens to view the behavior of the kids and the diagnosis of the kids, and even if they're not diagnosed, I often tell my teachers, like, if you think that your kiddo has executive functioning problems, you don't have to wait till they're diagnosed to put into play some of the things that you've learned, right? Like, why do we have to wait on that? Like,
Yeah.
if you know they're struggling with executive functioning, impulse control, time management, like jump in with some interventions and help them. We don't have to wait till we've labeled it as something official to help them. And across a school building or across a clinic, people from all these different walks of life are going to need to kind of view the kid through the same lens to be sure they get the most effective treatment possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, so for certification, after the first year of certification, we do require renewal. And individuals can choose to renew for 1, 2, or 3 years at a time, depending how much education they've completed in the realm of youth mental health for that renewal period. So talk me through why you feel it's important that clinicians or education professionals or rehab professionals not only take education once in this topic, but continue to maintain that knowledge for years to come.
Sure. So, I'll just subspecialize in neuroscience. That's where my PhD lies. And if you just take the research that's coming out just in neuro, if you don't keep up with what's going on, then your knowledge is just old. Like even 1 year out and what we're learning about the brain is old. Not all of it down to the core, but the nuances of it are ever changing. And the same for the DSM-5. It came out and changed, so much about the autism diagnosis. And so if you're not keeping up, then you're being left behind as far as like what's the newest, information about this disorder, what's the newest information about that disorder. And not like new disorders are popping up, but they do change the name and they slightly can change some of the symptoms that are required for diagnostic criteria and things like that. So when we don't stay up to date on all aspects, from the ethics of what we do to the, what are the most effective evidence-based strategies for what we do, then you may actually be doing a disservice to the client because you're using something that they actually found in these particular instances to not be effective. And you're using it because you thought, well, that's what I learned. I learned it 5 years ago. It's got to be still true.
Yeah, absolutely. For our audience listening today, both in the top of the screen, the QR code that you see, as well as on occasionally on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a website link through, and that information is going to take you right to information both on the certification, but as well as the trainings that Nicolle was just referencing, some good training options where you can learn the skills needed and stay up to date on all of that latest research. So certainly, I hope our audience checks that out. So one final question for you as we wrap up today, Nicolle. Why were you passionate about helping Evergreen develop the youth mental health specialist certification?
Sure. So I was raised in a small town in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma currently is one of the leading, and this is not a good thing, leading states of mental health disorders, like the rate of which we have it, and one of the lowest numbers for treatment. And so whenever you go into the schools, you see this everywhere. And uh, whenever I was first asked to do talks for PESI and this for you guys, like it became very obvious that I was way more passionate about this than I realized because I was pregnant with twins when I was first asked. And I was like, heck yeah, I'll travel the country and go give talks on mental health. That sounds great. But the reason, and this is what I tell every audience, like there was the trajectory I ended up on is not necessarily the trajectory that most people would have assumed I was on. And I ended up with the PhD and I got a great life, but it probably wasn't where people thought I was going to end up. And the reason is because teachers and coaches and grandparents and parents and all these people came in to be sure that I ended up where I ended up. And I think that if I didn't have people in the school system that advocated for me and watched out for me and helped, then I wouldn't have got there. And I, to my knowledge, don't have any mental health problems that I had to overcome. But add that on, and I have a sibling, and he had some more struggles than I did. And people weren't able to help him, and he went in a completely different direction than I did. And I think that seeing that for myself made me realize that more people need to be able to help at all the levels, and not just once we're 18 and can find services for ourselves, but from that first level of, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, when we start seeing some of these behavioral differences and challenges in the kids.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it takes more than just mom and dad, right? We need to create a village to support our
For
youth
sure.
so that they can have the best outcomes possible.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to add today, Nicolle, before we sign off here?
I don't think so. I think that was really great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank our audience for joining us today. I hope everyone has a good day.